There are two misconceptions around residence and citizenship that just refuse to die. Today, once again, I'm going to set the record straight. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. And here at Nomad Capitalist, it is my goal to help educate you because I understand for a lot of you, this stuff is new. And the idea of planting flags around the world and not being based or reliant upon just one country is a foreign concept. And so these are two misconceptions that I just keep seeing again and again and again that I want to correct. And I'm going to point people back to come and watch this episode when I keep seeing them. The first one is that if you have a residence permit, you need to live in your residence country. One thing that stood out to me is we put out a little short where we talked about obtaining residence in Honduras. And people said, oh, this is ridiculous. Who wants to live in Honduras? To which I said, well, first of all, you've got the island of Roatan in the Caribbean. It's English speaking. You can live there as an expat. It is relatively safe, certainly compared to mainland Honduras standards. And so that is a place for people who want kind of a cheaper Caribbean destination that is on the radar. Not nearly as developed as some of the other Caribbean destinations, but not a bad place to be. What I also said was you're missing the point of necessarily having a residence permit that you don't necessarily have to live there. It could be a plan B. It could be something you keep in your back pocket and becomes something that works towards a greater goal. And so there are certain countries, such as, let's say, the United States. I talk to a number of people every year who they or their spouse has a U.S. green card. And depending on their nationality, they have a different perspective, where if they're British with a U.S. green card, they're really not that concerned if they leave for too long, that the green card won't be canceled. If they're Honduran or Egyptian with a U.S. green card, they're certainly more attuned to the fact that being gone for too long will lead to that permanent resident status being canceled. And so that can be done. There's not necessarily a rhyme or reason to that. But having a residence permit in the United States means you should be living in the United States. It's not a thing where you keep it in your back pocket, live for one day a year. And by the way, having a green card in and of itself is not very tax friendly, even if you could spend time somewhere else, even though there are some of the exemptions available that are available to citizens. But that's a relatively rare thing. And so obviously we're talking to people who are from the US, who are from Canada, who are from Australia, who want to go out to countries where they can be treated better, they can be treated best. And the residence permits that we talk about here often don't require you to live there. Now, you look at some countries in Latin America, look at a country like in Nicaragua. Eventually, they are going to want you to live there. They're not going to be nearly as strict as the US, but they are eventually going to want you to live there, or they're going to make you reapply for residence. There are certain countries where if you want to claim citizenship, you need to live there for a certain period of time, whether it's Portugal's golden visa, roughly 7 days a year, whether it's a country like a Costa Rica, where it's 6 months a year, whether it's some of the countries in Europe that have much less flexible golden visas, where maybe it's 9 months a year. Again, you can have status in Ireland, for example, through the IIP program, great program. And you only have to spend 1 day per year there, but you're never going to become a citizen on 1 day a year. You're going to have to live there for like half the time for 8 or 9 years to become a citizen. So the idea is a residence permit doesn't always have to turn into a citizenship. Some residence permits do turn into a citizenship, like what we call a paper residence. You go there with the intention of getting the residence permit, fulfilling minimal physical presence, and then going and applying for citizenship at the end. You may need to learn a language in some cases, you may not. You'll generally need to learn some of the history of the country, pass a test on the culture, that kind of thing. But it's a much more affordable way than citizenship by investment if you're willing to pop your head in every once in a while to keep a residence permit active. You might have a residence permit where I had a gentleman not so long ago where he said, I just want to be able to live in Europe. I want access to Europe. I don't plan on giving up my U.S. citizenship. I'm a proud American. And I said, okay, Portugal's golden visas become more expensive now. He didn't really trust Greece, which has one of the cheaper golden visa programs. He said, look at a program like Latvia. You're never, unless you're really going to live there and pay taxes, full time, you're never going to become a Latvian citizen. But it gives you that access where for every 5 years you pay a renewal fee that's relatively reasonable. There's your access to Europe. You have a higher status than a tourist. You can go there whenever you want or not go there if you don't want to. And so that residence permit served a purpose. The other idea was, he thought, hey, even though I'm not supposed to be, getting a Latvian residence permit and living in Portugal, you really shouldn't do that. He said, maybe I need to go somewhere else in Europe for business, and having that European residence permit serves me better than being a tourist if I'm going somewhere for a week or two. It's worth having that access. And so you don't have to live in your residence permit country. You can use it as a pathway to citizenship. You can use it for access to a region. You can use it just as a place that you want to go in case things get badly. I've said in an episode called The Great American Plan B, many Americans should consider getting a Mexican residence permit. It's not very expensive. It's right next door. You can get in right next door for a number of reasons if things go wrong, or just if you want a better lifestyle. A lot of Americans that we're talking to want to go and spend time in Mexico. It's a great place, quite frankly, that's very underrated. And so having that residence permit doesn't necessarily oblige you to live in Mexico, but it gives you the option. And, again, if you have a situation where borders close around the world, maybe having a residence permit for a country gives you a higher level of access where you can get in and go to your home. You can go in and meet family, whatever. So a residence permit does not mean you have to live in that country. There's many different reasons that you can have it. And so when I say, hey, look at Mexican residence, I don't want to move to Mexico, that may not be what you necessarily need to do. Number two is that you don't have to live in your citizenship country. So the same rule, but instead of residence, we're talking about citizenship. You don't have to live in your citizenship country. I got asked recently, how much time do I need to spend in St. Kitts and Nevis to become a citizen? The answer is 0. It can be done entirely through correspondence. You gather a whole bunch of documents that you prove that you're an upstanding citizen, and you never even have to go there, with the exception of Antigua and Barbuda, which requires 5 days in 5 years. In the Caribbean, some of the other citizenship programs do require you to pop in or spend 15 days or come sign a power of attorney for property or whatever. But in the Caribbean, just as an example, that's a country where you don't necessarily have to be there to get citizenship. You make your donation, which is generally the advisable way to do it. You never have to go. Now, what some people will confuse is they'll say, oh, I hear St. Kitts has 0 taxes, so I'll stay in Canada with my St. Kitts passport and I won't pay taxes. Well, that's not how it works. You need to exit the Canadian tax system, exit whatever tax system you're in, and then go and be in St. Kitts. And in the case of St. Kitts, you need to live there for 6 months a year to become a taxpayer there. You don't have to live there 6 months a year to be a citizen. You don't have to, live there 6 months a year to keep your passport active. You can renew your passport, without going there even. But if you want the tax benefits, then you do need to live there. Now, they're not going to add extra tax burdens onto you the way that the United States does if you live overseas. So, that's a point of confusion. But you don't have to live in St. Kitts. You don't have to get any passport where you necessarily live there. Now, if you want to become a German citizen, maybe you have some German ancestry. There's some relatively tight conditions for that. Other than that, you better plan on moving to Germany and learning some German. But for the kind of countries that we're talking about that make a good second passport, you don't have to live there. And so one thing I hear is people saying, well, I really want to go to this Antigua before I do the citizenship. And I say, no, you're looking at it all wrong. It's as if you're on one of those cruise ships and you look out and you see, oh, there's the Liberian flag. The Royal Caribbean cruise ship ain't taking anyone to Liberia. But they figured out Liberia was the most convenient place to register their ship, or you'll see Panama is another big one. And so if you can register yourself to a country that wants to leave you alone, that believes in peace, that believes in low or no taxes, that, hey, listen, you be our citizen, we're not going to bother you. We're not going to drag you into the military. We're not going to make you pay taxes if you don't live here, or even in some cases, if you do live here, you get that passport. Is it so important to live there? Now, if that passport was from Iraq and it gave you all those benefits, and you'd say, okay, well, if the world fell apart, I'd like to have a country I can go to of citizenship. Maybe I don't want to go to Iraq. But, St. Kitts, maybe it's a little bit claustrophobic for some people, but it's hardly, Iraq or somewhere that, there's, weapons being shot into the air or something. So it's a place that you could live if you had to. But, I think people often look at, would I like living there? To me, it's a vessel to say, I'm going to go get a residence permit somewhere else where I do want to live. And so, I understand that residence is not the same kind of residence that you hear when, again, the guy from Iraq moves to the United States and he gets a permanent residence card, he gets a green card. He wants to reside in the United States. You don't necessarily want to reside in your residence country. You don't necessarily want to reside in your citizenship country. You probably want to have, 2 different places, 3 different places, multiple passports, multiple residences, and then move them around. And so when people want to go and look at a citizenship country, listen, I'm all for establishing emotional connections to certain countries. If you have someone from your family tree and you just feel like I really want to be Hungarian because my grandmother was Hungarian and I feel great about that, as long as you understand any potential risks involved with that, I'm all for that. I think that's great. If you want to go and get your St. Kitts passport and then live somewhere else and get that citizenship later, and again, feel good about that and feel proud to be whatever that new country, I think that's fantastic. But I think if you're talking about merely diversifying, protecting yourself, creating a plan B, ensuring that you will, that your assets are well protected, you don't have to live in a residence country. You may choose to have multiple residence permits and live in one or live in some part-time, but you don't have to live there all the time. And you don't have to live in your citizenship country. If you have questions about this, leave a comment below and I'd like to review them to answer. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.